Hi there, it's Tasha, and I'm hoping to dispel some of the myths around being someone who's considered really sensitive. I look at it more like being a super feeler, and there's some excellent information on a website that's called emotion-focusedfamilytherapy.org to learn a little bit more about super feelers and emotion coaching, and a lot of really neat research and practice around helping people with eating disorders. But the super feeler, you may have one in your family. You might be a super feeler yourself. You may know someone who's a super feeler or married to someone who is. And a super feeler can really be a superpower when you get a handle on it. But for the average person that doesn't really know maybe what it's all about, or thinks that there's something unusual about who they are, or things just feel more overwhelming than they can manage, it could kind of feel like a bit of a deficit and kind of a curse more so than a superpower. But really, first of all, I want to let you guys know kind of what makes someone a super feeler. So we know that super feelers run in families. So you may be someone with a mom or dad or a grandma or an auntie that is also someone that felt things really big. So I can't blame people for having curly hair other than my lovely dad. Some of it's genetics, but you learn to live with what you've been given. And so that's a piece that we can't take away, but we sure know what we can do to help someone who might be born into this world as a super feeler learn to understand how their body works, how emotions pop up in their body, that there's a need, and how do we help them advocate for that need and help soothe that need so that they can function and carry on with life tickety-boo. Another piece that is a reality that's not based on genetics, and this is a controllable piece sometimes, is what happens in our world. And so our early experiences have a profound effect on who we are and what we believe about ourselves and who we become. And so if there have been adverse experiences that you've gone through in your early years, whether it be an experience of being bullied or mom and dad going through a divorce, or the loss of a significant person in your life, or a move to a different community that didn't go so smoothly, even these events, these external factors, can rattle someone's system and kind of let that super feeler kind of person come out more than what would have happened if that early childhood experience didn't take place. So a super feeler is someone who feels things deeper than the average person. And when I say feel, it's not just like I am someone that feels sad more often, or I am someone that gets easily overwhelmed, in terms of this is a process that happens only in our head. It's not just the thinking, it's actually our body's reaction. It's the physiology that goes along with it. When I get scared, I find myself shaking. Or when I get angry really quickly, and it's really hard for me to come down from that. Or the feeling that I have when I feel guilty is almost paralyzing. I can't fall asleep at night because I just can't shake this yucky, heavy feeling off my shoulders. So we know that super feelers feel things more intensely than the average person. It doesn't pass very quickly. And they're also people that sort of pick up on other people's stress quite easily. So if, kind of like an emotional sponge. So if you walk into your classroom and you can remember being like the little person in grade 1 that walked in and was, you just knew the way that, Mrs. Smith was standing there, whether her shoulders were a little bit up or her brow was maybe a bit more furrowed than usual, that you knew that you had to be really good that day because Mrs. Smith wasn't in the greatest mood. That would be a super feeler kind of feeling. Super feelers also are the kind of people that come home from school and they might check in with mom and dad's emotional world before they decide to share what's going on with theirs. And so it comes from a really loving place, kids wanting to take care of mom and dad, and teenagers doing the same, but it's kind of the wrong way around. What we know is that kids need to get their emotions attended to, and it's okay and actually developmentally really appropriate for them to be egotistical. So we don't want to be checking in with someone else before we tell people what's going on. We want to be able to give the stuff to mom and dad so that they can help us regulate and make sense of this big stuff. Super feelers also might have a bigger reaction than the average person to someone yelling, seeing someone not being kind to another person in a class. So child 1 might see one person say something really unkind to another and go, whatever, it wasn't me, and walk along. a super feeler might see that same interaction and feel so hurt that they didn't intervene, or empathize so greatly with a person that was victimized that they can't even think and carry on with their day because they're so caught up in that emotion. And it's not a bad thing. It's beautiful to be an empathetic person, but it's almost like it tips too far and it becomes overwhelming to that person. And so what happens, because it's overwhelming, is that the person that walks around with a lot of anxiety or a lot of big feelings that they don't know what to do with, they're motivated to get rid of that feeling. They're motivated to feel like they can push it onto someone else or find a way to sort of push it down in their system so that they don't have to feel it anymore. And so super feelers can start getting busy with other people. So they might be the person that's running back and forth and keeping friendship groups settled and happy. But it's motivated as a way to soothe their system. And if it's done too much, obviously it's not really helpful, because you're not ever getting a chance to understand the emotion that's going on in you and getting those needs met. Super feelers often can feel sort of weird and alone in this world. No one really knows what we're feeling. No, we don't have a little monitor on our forehead that says, I think I'm someone that is more sensitive than the average person. Can you take extra time to check in with me each day? Because I may not be the person that comes to you and says I need help, but I really do. And so if we go unnoticed, we might feel a lot of shame about how we feel and feel like there's something wrong with us. And by no means is there anything wrong with someone who's a super feeler whatsoever. I would say tons and tons of people in my world are super feelers, and 99.9% of the people that walk through my office door are super feelers. So they've come to a good place because they're sitting across from someone else who's the same way. And we really celebrate that important part of who we are, but also teach skills to navigate being someone that feels things differently than the average bear. Another piece too, I think, that comes along with being a super feeler is the need sometimes, because we do feel maybe unusual or feel like we're kind of different than other people, it doesn't mean that we necessarily have a family that understands how we work. So we might have a mom and dad that really dismiss our feelings or think that we're, get angry with us because we're someone that gets upset more easily than the average person, or it's harder for us to, go into the school or start a new activity. There's lots of anxiety that pops up there. And I would say, as a heads up to parents, to teachers, to coaches, people that are involved with working with kids, is it's not good enough to treat kids and teenagers as from the perspective of what you always have needed. If you've got a person in front of you that is someone that is a super feeler, it's learning more about what a super feeler is. It's learning more about how they feel, finding times to be able to talk to them, maybe even working with a counselor or reading a bit more about emotion-focused family therapy to learn better ways to help communicate with that person so that they feel more in charge and more capable of handling these big emotions that bubble up in them. So there's always room for growth and improvement. So by no means, as a parent, do you get off the hook because you're not a super feeler. If you're raising one, you better buckle up and start learning some skills. The neat thing is that the skills are very teachable, and always, I think, when you see one of your kids sort of struggling and overwhelmed by things more than is keeping them happy and causing sort of some conflict or some hard times in families, as well as there's usually a ton of motivation for things to work a little bit better. So I'm always excited, and I think there's no problem that cannot be solved with a little bit more education and hard work and maybe some vulnerability as you learn some new skills and own up to your part of maybe what got you to that place. So with super feelers, I guess if it goes unchecked, and so this is a family that might not realize that they're raising a super feeler, or a super feeler that's really sneaky about keeping that side of himself or herself quiet and protected, that may be quietly suffering in silence, is that unhealthy behaviors can pop up. And it's not something to shame or blame someone about. It really is a natural way that our brain kind of takes care of us. If we're feeling overwhelming and we don't know what to do with it, we don't have the wiring to do anything differently, we're gonna fall back to behaviors that are actually gonna kind of work to settle our system down. but they may not be the behaviors that are going to be helpful to practice over and over again for our whole life. So a super feeler that quietly might be restricting food or overeating can happen. Some super feelers that go unchecked develop some OCD behaviors, and so that's just a compulsive way, a pattern of doing things over and over again that works to settle a system down. The unfortunate thing, though, is it doesn't let the person feel and tolerate the feelings and get the need met behind it. So there's a not so great part that comes on with OCD, and sometimes the behaviors actually get more and more practiced and more rigid and actually increase over time. Depression and anxiety can be a piece and a feature that goes along with a super feeler. Again, if it goes unchecked and that sort of internalizing piece gets practiced over and over again. And even a lot of chronic health conditions are related to being a super feeler. We know that there's a big psychological component that goes, an anxiety component that goes along with chronic pain and irritable bowel syndrome, with rheumatoid arthritis and different conditions. And so by no means am I saying, oh, it's all because you're a super feeler, but take a step back and maybe wonder if some of the big feelings that you've had in your life, or big events that have happened in your life that you haven't had a chance to process or make sense of, or really face and kind of dig through a little bit, if they're sort of rattling around there, it might be worth going back and doing some therapeutic work around it. It might really help free you from some of the symptoms that you're sort of plagued with in your day-to-day life. There's lots of connection now between mind, body, and definitely there's an emotional component to lots of chronic illnesses. I hope that this has given you a little bit of information about a super feeler, and also I hope that it's kind of sparked an interest in learning a little bit more. So I don't know when the next time I'm going to be doing it will be, but I will most definitely in the fall be doing some talks around learning the skills of emotion coaching. And this is one of the most beautiful teachable models to give to parents and teachers and coaches around helping the young person that you really care about, identifying the emotion that's going on for them, helping them tolerate it, validate that what they're feeling makes a whole lot of sense, and helping them kind of settle that feeling in their body. And so the more that we join with someone and help them regulate themselves, well, I guess it's co-regulate at that point, the more and more times that they practice that with another person, the closer they're going to get to being able to self-regulate. And that's really what we're looking for in the long run. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We need to do co-regulation hundreds and hundreds of times before we get to a place where we feel really competent knowing what to do with that emotion. But the support system around the super feeler is a key piece to that super feeler it becoming their super power in life, or the thing that actually causes a lot of dysfunction. I'm pointing the needle more towards the support system, learning how to coach that super feeler into becoming a super powered young person. So anyways, if you would like to learn a little bit more about upcoming talks or between girls groups that I might be running, or counseling work that I offer in my practice, please go to my website, tashabelix.com. And until next time, breathe and be well.